hands if you know that Jesus isn't worthy.
Everybody lift your hands if you know that Jesus is worthy.
Lift your hands, Jesus is worthy. Open up, let's give.
Open up and give a praise. Let's do it in the hurt.
If you love him, let's glory.
If you love him, let's glorify him.
Oh, glorify him. Say rejoice. Say. Somebody scream. Let the people look on. Let the people look on. By you, will. Say, oh, thy Lord, I will rejoice and glad. This is the day. This is the day that the Lord has made. Somebody say.
Peace come, not like pray when you feel peaceful, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so
I'm still alive cause you saved me. Once again, G.O.D. Time after time, you the only.
hey Heart family, how you doing? We're here for another episode of Heart to Heart. I'm Pastor Merrick, and I'm excited to let you know some things that we have coming up at Heart Church. As you may know already, we meet in person first, second, and third Sunday. So we will be meeting next Sunday, first Sunday in November. We want you to come. Why do we want you to come? We want you to come because it is our vision series, Heart of the House, where we talk about everything that we believe God is going to be doing in our church for next year. And I believe it's not only going to be a blessing for our house, but also for yours. So make sure you mark your calendars and come. Also, I want you to know that you can join us every Wednesday at 6:30 for Heart of the Matter. It is our biblical growth series where we talk about the Bible. We talk to each other. We grow together, and we make sure that we put God first back in our lives midweek. So with that being said, I have the esteemed privilege of being with today's guest for our episode today of Heart to Heart. Before I let you introduce yourself, brother, and I want to let everybody know what we are talking about today. So if you've been connected to Heart this month, you know that we have been in a series called In God We Trust, trying to get our money right. And if we're going to get our money right, not only do we need spiritual insight, but we need some practical tips. And I brought none other than my brother, Mawuli Vodi. Mawuli, can you, first of all, welcome to the Heart to Heart. So, you know, we in different places every time, so I can't even say to the crib, but wherever we are, welcome, brother. It's so good to have you here. For those who don't know, he is my frat brother. We met at George Mason University. I helped bring him into the illustrious Iota Alpha chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And since he has graduated, he's gone on to do some amazing things. So Mawuli, first of all, welcome. Let us know what you're doing, what you do on a regular basis. Why are you relevant to this conversation, brother?
Pastor, I appreciate it. It's interesting calling you pastor too.
I know.
I know you before you get back
it off. You ain't gotta say pastor. Just call me Merrick. Call me, Big Brother Gladiator or something like that.
Man, it's a pleasure to really be included. I've been doing a lot of random things, I would say. After or before I even left George Mason, I started off as a stockbroker intern and basically worked my way up from intern to branch manager. So that was a journey of almost 10 years of being in the industry. And I saw some things that I liked and I didn't like. And but one of the things I loved was the education, because that was something that someone could never take from me. And I hope to kind of bring some of that as well. But when I left, I also stepped into consulting as well. So not only just personal finance, but finance on the federal level as well. So multiple roles, different certifications, licenses. So definitely was a licensed stockbroker, certified fraud examiner, project manager, all of those different certifications. So bring a lot of that into what I do. So,
that's what's up, man.
It's fun. It's definitely fun. It's a labor of love. For sure.
And tell us a little bit about the shirt that you're wearing now.
This shirt. So it's funny because I didn't know you was going to ask me anything.
Right.
But what I always like to tell people, if you're secure in your finances, you can be present in other areas of your life that matter most. For me, that's my faith, my family, and then finance is just the language I speak. That's why my company is called Financially Present. And, it's one of those things where I realized some of the things that were keeping me up at night, and whatever I needed to do had to involve these three things.
So Financially Present, that's an active company that you got going on right now. Yes. What do you all specialize in that, and kind of what's your work with Financially Present?
So with Financially Present, I focus on the education. Okay. So I also do coaching, consulting as well, but I make sure that in everything I do, I'm imparting education on someone so that they can at some point not need me.
Right.
So I feel like I'm going through this process where I always will hold your hand, and then at some point, and I'll know it's okay to let go.
Okay.
That way, you won't need me, because at some point, I'm not going to have everything you need.
Right.
You're going to need to move on and do your own thing, or you'll mature well enough to the point where you'll feel like, hey, I'm good.
So this is basically personal financial education and guidance for any age, any group of people. I see the ring on your finger. You clearly are a family man, and that kind of jumps me into my first question. So we all know why finance is important, but personally for you, your family, your wife, your children, why has finances become such a focal point for you, a passion for you? Why have you made it your life's work, and what's the importance around that?
I feel like it found me. I was always prudent with money.
Yeah.
Some would say cheap.
Right.
I like to say fiscally
They call me
responsible.
cheap too, bro.
I'm probably cheaper. I know only one other brother that's probably cheaper than me. Okay. You know him too.
Right. Absolutely.
But I think between me and him, we've mastered a lot of cheapness.
Okay.
Or
frugality. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Fiscally responsible is what we like to say too.
Yeah.
But, I was always that person where, like, even at school, I was the treasurer for, this organization here, this organization there. And
weren't you the treasurer for
chapter, for African Student Association, Student Funding Board governor.
Yes.
Yeah, so like
out here.
The finance roles found me. I ended up being that person where, like, if you left a certain amount of money on the table and left, like literally left the room or left the building or the area, the same amount would still be there. Yeah. Because that's just who I am.
That's so good.
If it's yours, it's yours. So
that's so good.
It's just one of those things where I was attracted to learning a lot about money and just sharing that information. That was the thing to me. Like I miss the clients from when I was a stockbroker, but I enjoy having that information as well, because I'm one of those people where I'm a finance nerd. So. The background noise for me is Bloomberg, CNBC, like that stuff's on all day.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like white noise. I can go to sleep to it.
That's good. No, that's necessary. And so one of the things that we've been focusing in our church, and I think this will be relevant for everybody who's watching, is one of the things that I think has become a mantra in the church is really just trying to help increase people's faith to be givers. And so a lot of financial discussion in church, a lot of sermons, a lot of rah-rah has been building faith so that people would give their money unto God and hope that he brings increase based off of their act of faith. And I believe that there's some truth to that in some regard, but I think where the church fails at is being able to truly equip people to be better stewards of money, of their money. In other words, I think God blesses good stewardship, not just faith. And I think that it takes faith to be able to do that. And so, yes, there is a building of faith that we need to do, but there's also, like you said, an education piece. And that's why I knew you would be the very perfect person for us to bring. This last series, we were educating people on trying to become people who count the cost through budgeting, and how to build out a budget for just your personal finances, whether you're single, whether you're young, whether you're old, that is super important for you to be able to see your life on paper in the form of a budget. I think I told everybody that that I can look at your budget and I can see your life story. I can see where your priorities lie. I can see where your desires lie. I can see where your disciplines are. I can see even if you don't have a budget, it still tells a story about your life. And so as we think about budgeting, I know one of the areas we talked about was giving. We talked about growing our money. We talked about paying our obligations. When you give people insight on their personal finances, especially around budgeting, kind of like what are some practical tips or what are some things that you tell people as it relates to being able to just see their life on paper and being able to put something like that together?
I'm glad you said on paper too, because we're living in an age where we're navigating away from it. And I've tried various methods where like you use an app. I've tried it where I've used a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet guy, so I like that. But there are a lot of times where I know that if I write it down physically, like it has a different level of impact, and I'm trying to write more because budgeting is not something you do once. Or even some people call it something different, but it's still budgeting in the sense of the word. And once you write it down, though, it has a different type of weight to it. And it's like you can't ignore it.
That's good.
And I mean, I would encourage people definitely to write these things down, but also be honest with themselves because, budgeting, it exposes you to yourself. And not everybody wants to be honest. Not everyone likes to be called out or feel like, okay, now the attention's on me. And I think an important thing is to have some accountability. So you kind of need to tell somebody if you really want some weight to this budget or if you want this action in budgeting to go further. It's really important to say, hey, okay, you can tell a friend, tell a spouse, tell a parent, anyone, just like, hey, I'm about to try this budget thing. And, just letting you know, one, that could set a boundary because now they know, okay, well, maybe he might not want to go out to dinner, every day of the week, maybe just once a week or, you can set up that boundary and now they know that, okay, one, I can also check on them and say, hey, how's that budget thing doing that you were talking about, a couple of months ago? You still doing it? Because if you're not, then you'll feel some type of way and you'll realize, okay, someone else is paying attention to my behaviors. I need to own it.
Ooh.
So
it's something that you said, because I think that when we think about finances, we think about money. I think one of the things that we think about it is it's so mental, it's so logical, it's so analytical. But what I'm hearing from you is that there may be a very much emotional point to this, that sometimes people got to face themselves and you have to have a level of vulnerability. You have to have a level of like really digging down and being like, am I ready to face myself? Am I ready to deal with the fact that I overspend in this area, that I have a weakness in this area? And a lot of times it seems like we try to like justify things away. Well, I had a hard week at work, so it's okay that I went and ate lobster tonight. Oh, I had a hard day. Like, let me go ahead. I work hard. Let me go ahead and get this purse. Let me go ahead and. So when you think about prioritization, if somebody's be like, hey, what do I need to prioritize in my budget? What are some of the things that you think need to float to the top of that expense column for people? And I know it's different for everybody, but just if someone was starting from scratch, an alien came down and it's like, hey, what do I need to prioritize in my budget? What are some things that you would instruct them to do maybe?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some items that are like, they're given. You need a place to stay. You need to be able to afford to keep utilities on. Like there's some, I would say, they're somewhat controllable, but the non-negotiable things. Like you can control some of your living costs, but you need a place to stay. You need to be able to pay for utilities and take care of specific things. So those need to be prioritized, obviously. There are the other variable costs, the ones that like, okay, I don't have to eat out as much, or I could eat out, but maybe tone it down, and I remember some of the things that I would do, especially when I was like fresh out of college. The biggest thing was like, okay, well, happy hour, networking, and doing this and doing that. I'm like, well, if I just ate at home and then I can just go out, maybe I just have a beverage, or not a beverage, a meal, a dessert. Like, I would find a way to
pre-gaming at home, absolutely.
My inner frugality, coming. I was like, how can I make this budget?
That's good.
Like, there's some ways that's a variable cost. You can modify some things.
Absolutely.
I know that's really trivial, but like that can make a big difference.
It can.
People. I'm not like a crazy Starbucks person, so I have no problem making my own coffee. And I know some people are like, well, I gotta have it this way, and they make it the way I like. Well, for me, I just like my coffee black. And so It is what it is.
Yeah.
But like there are some things that we can control and things that we can't, or we can control them less.
Right.
Controllable. So I really think that we have to take a step back and understand that and realize that, hey, well, what are some of my money beliefs around that? And then there's also going to be some level of like retrospective views, because at the end of the day, the way we were brought up with money shapes how we use money today.
That's good.
I know for me, I came from a great home.
Yeah.
I mean, finances were like, but mom was cooking multiple nights a week, if not every night, every week. So we didn't go out to eat much.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody had to graduate for us to go out to dinner.
Oh, wow.
Like, and it was
graduate. Somebody had to get a whole degree in order for us to go.
And it was always the same thing. We went to the China buffet.
Yeah,
that was the thing. And but now as an adult, with kids,
you live outside. Yeah, I know, brother. Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you. I'm the car right next to you in the parking lot. Yeah, I'm with you, bro.
We definitely go out to eat way more than I ever did growing up, and I enjoy it.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that it's a variable cost. And I find that through just maturing, I'm like, I actually value that. I value the fellowship that's involved with taking your family out to eat or meeting a friend for dinner and all these type of things. And not that I missed that growing up, but it's like there's some value there for sure. Like in understanding that, okay, me spending money eating out, for me, maybe that's not overspending. Right? Maybe because I budgeted, I figured that out, or that's part of the framework that I'm operating under. But for someone else, they'll say, nah, eat at home and then go out and do something. Because I like elaborate vacations. You know, they may like that versus eating out on a regular basis. So it's like we have to figure out what the give and take is going to be.
So there's something that you said that it sounds like step one may be really after you get over the fact of the hump of the emotional of like, I need to see myself. That seems like maybe that's step one. Maybe step two is figuring out my value system and really trying to understand, like, if I had a specific area to put money into, I know that this brings a level of value to me in something. And so whether that value is like being honorable to God, or maybe that value is being able to go on vacation, like you said, or go out to eat with my family, that has an intrinsic value to it that I can help to prioritize my variable list and what's on my variable side. So when you think about the ones that are like necessities, like how we live versus the variable ones, do you work in like percentages? Do you think that it should be like what if it's like, hey, I need a place to live, but I'm spending 75% of my income on my place to live? You know what I mean? Like versus being like, no, by the time you finish paying all your obligations, you should be sitting maybe at like 50% or so. Like, do you have anything like that you help people with, or is it just kind of like case by case?
Right. I think it does have to be case by case, because there's a lot that goes. I've heard of 50, 30, 20. I've heard.
What's that?
So when we talk about percentages of wants versus needs versus savings. Okay. Some people say 50% can go towards your needs. Okay. 30% towards what you want, and then 20% towards like savings, retirement, or something along those lines. Gotcha. And then amongst those three categories, people will kind of tweak whatever they're comfortable with. Okay. And there's also giving. There's another portion there as well. So that varies from person to person too. And it really, really depends. And it depends on the value system, depends on how you grew up, it depends on if you have the means. Right. But like if you're in a position where you feel like living costs are 70%, or like your dwelling, like rent or the mortgage is 70%, that does make it pretty tough. Yeah. So I would say for someone that they would need to work as best as they can to reduce some of their other costs, or figure out a way to get that 70 lower. Okay. If they could, if it meant renting a room out or something. Right. Yeah. I would recommend lower the better, especially in certain areas, because that's our biggest cost. Right. When it comes to living. That's a good thing. So being able to start with the 50, 30, 20, and be able to work back from there to be like, hey, I'm going to look at this like 50% of needs, 30% wants, 20% savings, and then being able to work back from there. Another thing that you said too was that a lot of times how we feel and our expectations around money are based off of how we grew up.
And I don't know if people really think about that, that your expectations around your adulthood, around your money is based off of how you grew up, in the sense of, one, either we had it and I need to keep getting it. And so that's going to determine how I look for partners. That's going to determine how I base people in their ability in life. Or we didn't have it and now I need it. And right. Yeah, and so, yeah, you know what I mean? What's funny is that both scenarios lead to people spending more money. But I think around building our expectations around money is super important as we think about what those percentages are. I'm going to turn the page a little bit because I'm really super interested. You said you were a junior stockbroker, then you made it to manager, and you help people in the stock market. So when we think about investing, when we think about the stock market, I know a lot of people feel like that is a place to come up. You know what I mean? Like there's so many people on IG that's like, hey, I could tell you how to flip these options. I think Aristotle's one. Yeah. There's another guy, I don't know, I'm blanking on his name. He's selling classes.
Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a whole bunch of people that's like, hey, I could teach you how to do these options. I could teach you how to do these swaps. I can teach you how to do all of these different things. As somebody who's been in the game, can you kind of like give people, and I know this is really hard to do because it's super detailed as far as like the difference between options and stuff like that. Maybe not going into too much detail on that end, but really about kind of like how those stocks work and why or why not we should really be trying to aim to play in that world, or is there another world that we should play in when we start to think about investing? Like if we want to be able to grow our money, what's maybe some boundaries or some bumpers that we need to be mindful of, and what's probably a good place to start for anybody that wants to do that?
Yeah, and I would say, for one, when it comes to investment, my appetite evolved as I got more and more comfortable in the industry. So one, I think the longer you stay invested, the more your appetite can change and more comfortable you get in these markets. Right. So like, for example, if I were to tell you like to go buy a specific stock right now, and maybe I own it, the issue if I'm doing that is maybe I've owned that stock for 10 years. Oh, yeah. All right. So I can watch that stock drop to 30% and I won't flinch. But someone who just bought it today, like they're not going to feel the same way. Yeah. Right. So, and then another thing for me is what I realized is I don't like the pain of regret in the sense that like if I miss on an investment, which means that I'm encouraged more to diversify. And I do still invest in individual stocks. And I think that's very important, at least for my risk appetite. Right. Because any conversation about investing, you have to include risk. Yeah. And for me, I like individual stock, but I'm overly diversified in so many other areas because I don't want to miss out. Because you can easily be wrong. You can be right about an industry, but wrong about the company. Oh, okay? That's good. So diversifying. So we're talking mutual funds. We're talking ETFs. So mutual funds are a basket of investments that are professionally managed, and you basically buy into that pool of investment. You have ownership. You can come and go from a long-term perspective. It's not something where you go in and out on a day-to-day basis. Okay. ETFs are a hybrid version.
Those are exchange-traded funds?
Correct. Okay. And those are they trade on an exchange like a stock would. Okay. So I could trade those in and out same day or within the same trading sessions. Right. Or I can hold it long-term, year after year after year, and still get a similar benefit as I would with a mutual fund. Okay. Yeah. And so in being safe with our investment as a first-time investor, being able to look at exchange-traded funds, being able to look at mutual funds, and start to build up our appetite for being able to put our money out, see our money come back, see the rise and the fall of the stock market, and being able to know like, hey, if the Dow is down and, and all of these things are happening, it will affect me, but it won't take me out. And I can get comfortable with the waves of the stock market. And then as we start to build our sea legs a little bit, then we can start to get more into like individual stocks or trying to like forecast a little bit and see what a company is doing moving forward in that way. As far as like a savings account,
are there certain savings accounts that we should be looking at? Like if I have, grandma gave me some money, I got $5,000 for graduating. People talk about all these different things like, oh, you need to put it in a Roth IRA, or oh, you need to put it in a CD. What are some like vehicles that make sense as far as being able to put our money away as opposed to like the whole trading thing? Like what are some things we should be looking at for that?
So if you don't, well, I'll answer it in this way. If you already invest and have brokerage accounts, there are investment options that, we call them like, they're still mutual funds in essence, and they can get you the same yield as you would maybe a high yield savings account.
Okay.
So you just have to know how to search for those.
Okay.
But if you don't have a brokerage account or an investment account, you can always, I would look at a credit union for sure, because a lot of times they do have better rates. And
Okay.
If not, and if you're comfortable with online banking, there are online banks that have low overhead.
Okay.
And they can offer high yield savings. But I will caveat that high yield savings has really only been a thing for the last few years because interest rates have been, they've been increased.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. Okay.
So for the longest time, they've been so low, and that's triggered a lot of things. Inflation has gotten crazy high. Home prices have been crazy. And that's because low interest rates encourage more buyers. So in order to slow the housing market, they increase interest rates.
Yep.
So high yield savings becomes a thing.
Yeah.
But when they start slowly decreasing rates, we'll notice that the high yield savings won't be as high yield anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So we building out a portfolio here in our budget. We've talked about the percentage splits. We've talked about how we can get into investing through mutual funds and ETFs. We even talked about these high yield savings if we want to put our money away. So we gave some tools and stuff like that. I kind of want to start tapping into some of your experience working at HBCUs, talking to college students, trying to educate them. What have you found to be some of people's most, some of the challenges that people deal with most when it comes to trying to get their money right? And I'm going to just put it like, even specifically in the Black community, is it because like we don't trust some of these vehicles that you're talking about? Is it because we don't know about them? Like, what in your experience, what are some of the challenges that we face with starting to try to get like our money together? You know what I mean? Why we still got it under the mattress?
It's funny. I think there's a mixture of all of those. I've spoken to some people where it's like they feel like they're hearing this for the first time. There are others who feel like they've heard about it, but they're not comfortable enough to take that step because maybe their family doesn't trust it, or they just never got comfortable with certain banks or certain institutions.
Right.
Which I get. There's a lot of history that confirms why people should feel that way already.
Okay.
And then there are some people who just feel like they're behind, and now they feel like they need to invest in something that it accelerates their growth, which also means their risk needs to be accelerated in a sense. So I've had situations where I talk about credit and debt management, and then they'll ask me, what do you think about crypto? And what do you think if I borrow money to invest in this? And if you borrow money to invest, you're not only taking the riskiness of the stock market and confining it into a smaller period of time, you're having to pay interest on top of that. So you really need to make that investment count. So that's why I don't recommend it.
Right.
And this, I've had a lot of experience calling people who owe the company money and say, hey, we got to sell your stock today because your account's not at the right level.
That's good.
So we've had people that don't trust the market or the industry, people who aren't comfortable with it, and people who feel like they're behind because they just maybe didn't get started fast enough, and now they want to accelerate that path, and the fast path is not the best.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's, as we talk about, being connected to our church and everything, I think that's one of the things that I am trying to, or that I think there are many preachers out there and many teachers of the gospel that are trying to get people to do, is to use these tools, but not necessarily put all their faith in them. Right. So it's like we still put our faith in a God who says that he's going to meet all of our needs. We still put our faith in a God who says that he's still going to be a provider, and that we then turn around and look at these tools as simply vehicles to be able to steward our money well, as opposed to trying to hit the jackpot so that we don't have to worry. Because one thing that I find in my line of work is that a lot of people try to use savings and things to deal with an underlying issue of like fear or an underlying issue of greed or underlying issue that if I can assuage my fear by building up my bank account to a place where I don't have to worry about any bills, then that'll get rid of my fear. Or when I build up my net worth to be able to handle any desire that I might have, I don't have to fear lack. I don't have, I can meet every desire that comes my way, and I don't have to deal with the humanity of it all. And I think that part of us being able to be good financial stewards is being able to have a heart change where it's like, hey, I believe fully in God. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And then because he's given me a certain amount of resources to work with, now I can do that in a responsible way, as opposed to trying to get rid of the things that I need to be trusting God to help me get rid of and deal with myself, or my therapist to deal with it. And so I say that all to say, like, this is you taking off your financial hat, you putting on your dad hat. What are some advice or some things that you hope that your children get in regards to thinking about money, thinking about who they are in regards to their money? What's the important 2 or 3 lessons that you're trying to get to your babies?
Yeah, my kids. What's funny? When they were 3 years old, I actually started giving them something I never got ever, really, or not ever consistently, and that's allowance.
Wow.
Right. And the reason for that was because I wanted them to start making money decisions early. Okay. And understand, because there's a certain level of anxiety when you step up to a cash register and you have to pay for something. There's, that feeling of having to put something back or having to figure out the math behind it. It's like, I'd rather them figure it out now when they're trying to buy candy versus like later on in life when they're
trying to buy a car.
A car,
right.
Like all of that. So, and still to this day, we do it pretty regularly. There's, we miss a few weeks here and there, and we just give it. And like, they realize quickly, like, this allowance is not enough. Yeah. Like, Daddy, we need more money. Because I'm talking about like literally $1 a week. Yeah. Just giving it to them.
That's good.
But this is completely different from the college savings plan that we have for them and the investment, the custodial accounts we have for them. Like, because as soon as we had their social security numbers at about 4 or 6 weeks old, they've owned stock. Okay. They've owned investments. So that's something that I continue to educate them on. But at the end of the day, it's like I want them to understand the stewardship as well, because there's no money that we can take with us. Because we're going to leave all of this for somebody else. In fact, it was somebody's before we got it. Right. And it's going to be somebody else at some point.
That's good.
So we have to know how to handle it as it flows through our hands.
That's so good. That's so good. And it's funny that you said that, because literally in 2 Timothy, I think it's in 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul tells Timothy to teach people to be good stewards, because it's something that they came into this world not having, and they're going to leave out of this world not having. Yeah. And yet we spend so much of our time trying to get it and trying to keep it as opposed to using it to flow through, like you said. Yeah. The last thing that I really want to kind of give you floor and touch on is so like I said, in our church, we talked about giving being a main area, paying our obligations, our bills, and our debt, and then also making sure that we are growing our money and using it for enjoyment. You mentioned something in passing, and I really want to touch on it, is the debt piece. The Bible says in Proverbs that he who is indebted is almost like a slave. Like it aligns it, the writer of the proverb, to slavery. And that's a kind of hard image for us to think about, especially in the Black community. Be like, okay, we're talking about chattel slavery to debt. Like, it's just a credit card, bro. Chill. But I'm sure that you've come across people, or maybe they've shared with you, or maybe they haven't, about debt, or the debt that they may be in, or maybe just even in your own experience or whatever. How do you feel about debt? And how urgent or how serious do we need to be in our effort to try to get out of debt? Is it something that is worth us just carrying with us and just paying minimum payments, or leveraging debt? Like how should we feel and think about debt? Is the Bible, and I know you probably won't say this, is the Bible tripping, or is it something that we really need to be mindful, like really serious about?
I think we really do. We have to be mindful because our society has this way of glamorizing it or just making it seem like, okay, the more you spend, you get more points and this and that. Like
through like credit card points and stuff
the
like
points.
that.
And there's sometimes where I'm like, I'm buying it this way, regardless of the points. I don't need to use it on my credit card.
Right.
You know, and where other people are like, man, but if I get this and I'll get a free flight and this and that. And I'm like, it takes a long time to get that type of stuff. There's annual fees. There's all types of things that continue to eat away at the benefit of buying something on credit. You know what I mean? So it's like the longer you hold on to it, it's like it just weighs heavier and heavier. And in my opinion, there are some people who have debt somewhat under control, and there are other people where it's a slippery slope. So it's a temperament thing for sure.
Yeah.
And you just don't want it to distract you from the other areas of your finances, because what's going to happen is you're less likely to invest, and you're more likely to be that type of person that needs to try and get ahead faster if you have debt that's been just lingering for so long.
Right.
So it's like, if it's something you can't take care of after like setting a specific time frame or a goal, like you may need to, and this is, check yourself in a sense and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to use my credit card for this. I'll plan this out, or I'll wait a little bit before I buy this. Or you have to know yourself, basically. I always say, save yourself from yourself.
That's so good.
So for me, like some of the minimums is I'm always going to be investing regularly. So I create less space for some of these other things. So setting a different type of boundaries, like automating the finance to go here, or the savings to go there, the vacation fund there, the Christmas fund, all of these different things are automated. So like, okay, so now at the end of the month, how much can I really mess up with?
Right.
That's kind of what it is. And I have to save myself from myself.
Right.
And I think that just comes through just some experiences, some mistakes, plenty of mistakes.
Bro. Yeah.
And they evolve and they change, But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to do that, because it can create this problem that weighs too heavily.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that. So that's what I'm saying, and I want you to give your information to everybody. It's funny that you say a slippery slope, because just even from personal experience, I was really great at managing and really keeping debt off. My wife and I worked really hard to do that. But what was interesting is that you may not be always able to control your income. And so you're managing your debt based off of what you're currently bringing in. And as markets change, as things shift, as things happen, that you could start to, if you do try to carry debt a lot, then when if your income ever drops, then now you have a boulder on top of you. Even though you have well intentions, even though you're financially responsible, you know what I mean? You can't control what's coming in. And so you have a boulder on top of you. And so I think maybe that's also another mindfulness thing about managing debt. Well, man, thank you so much for coming and pouring on us. I know that some of the tidbits that I came away from was the 50-30-20 as it relates to our budget as a starting point. That 50% went in to needs, 30% went into wants, and then 20 into saving and investing. We also, you dropped knowledge on us as far as how to get into investing, that we should start getting our sea legs under us with mutual funds and EFTs, and then even in using some high yield savings accounts when we talk about savings, and understanding that we have to monitor where interest rates are at that time. As we get out of here, I would love for you, one, to leave us with one last thought of something important that you just want to, it don't have to be something related to finances, but just something that you believe God's laid on your heart. And then let the people know where we can find you. We know about Financially Present, but like, how do they connect with you and to be able to book you and do all those things?
Right. Well, I appreciate it. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot that's been said.
Right.
If I could leave one thing, it takes faith to not only be a Christian, but faith to invest and to rely on this financial system. So you can't get anywhere without faith, not in this ecosystem. Okay, so, and as far as getting in touch with me, to reach me, you can find me at www.financiallypresent.com. There's a form you can fill out to contact me, or you can just email me directly at info@financiallypresent.com. And if you're really interested, check me out on YouTube at Financially Present.
Well, we are interested, bro. And we can't wait to check you out. Thank you again, Mawuli. I appreciate you, man. And I'm praying for the God continues to bless you and your family and your business, man.
Likewise,
take it easy, dog.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today. Another episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing y'all next month for another episode of Heart to Heart. God bless y'all.